Greetings. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, listening, all that fun stuff. So today, Female Reverence Sundays, pre-recorded rather than live, but that's okay. It's going to be a fun one. So because it is a Gregorian New Year, we're going to talk about a few things. One of the things that I like to get into are the stars, and so we're going to kind of link the star story, which links back to Sirius, aka Sopdet, also Wajet. But the topic today, or the goddess of the day, is Anput. And if you don't know who Anput is supposed to be the consort to Anubis. But if you've listened to me, or if you're new here, I try to bring it back to what I think is the truth, which is everything comes from the great mothers. All learnings, all teachings, all names, all information that has now been, and I think that all of that information came from the great mothers who used to study the stars, and then they would base harvest, ceremony, seasons, quote unquote, on the stars. And that those stories, because we are told, I don't know if this is true, but I think it's true, considering that writing or symbolism, things that were given symbolism, came later as far as like being published and put in books and what people called receipts, because receipts links back to recipes, which is where great mothers gave recipes that word then became receipts. So it was handed down through voice, through symbolism, through writings of symbols, and then writing came. But this all goes back to the great mothers, as far as I'm concerned, the great mothers and the stars. When you start looking into star stories, especially around Osiris, aka Jesus, and the stories around eating their flesh and then being reincarnated, has everything to do with harvest, when to plant, when to harvest, and then eating that and drinking that. We would make different drinks and we would make different food, and it would relate back to how we followed the stars. And so we tell the stories of the stars so that our kin can understand how to follow what we need to survive, which is when to plant, when to have ceremony, when to move, or to move, relocate. Okay, so with all of that, I wanted to do a video around Anput, because I've talked about deities that we don't really know much about, and Anput is one of them. We mostly hear about Anubis, and most of the stories link to Anubis. And the dog story. So let's talk about that. And I'd like to link this because, as you know, I did videos around animals linking to matriarchy. Well, let's talk about the dog, or the wolf, right? And we're going to start with the goddess and then mix in things about this awesome animal that would relate back to the goddess. And so when it comes to Anput, she is a goddess in her own right, meaning there are subtle information. I haven't been able to pull up exact quote unquote proof, because there isn't a ton of information around Anput. We mostly know about Anubis. So with what we do know, she is another one of crossroads, meaning transitions from life into death. She is related to darkness, and how she is depicted is what they have named a jackal. Well, she is not technically a jackal. She would technically be a wolf or a dog, and that dog as far as I'm concerned, and there is tons of information around this. That dog with the black head and the black ears is what has been theorized, and I agree with this theory. This dog is from Mesoamerica or South America or the Americas. Okay. Okay, here is a picture of the dog. Oh. And a puppy dog. Okay. Their ears do that naturally. You'll see a lot of dogs where they will kind of make their ears stand up like this. This dog's ears naturally stand up like that. And you will see many depictions of this dog in Mesoamerica, but you will see similar depictions of Anubis looking like that, okay? And Anput. Before I move on, the name of this dog, spelled Xoloitzcuintli, I apologize, not C-U-N, C-U-I-N-T-L-I. I'm going to spell it one more time, just to Xoloitzcuintli. All right. It's a black dog of South and Mesoamerica, and the pronunciation of the name of the dog is I've had to practice it a few times. Okay, give me a moment. Here's an Egyptian depiction, or what we're told Egyptian depiction of that same dog. Okay, and this is also Anput and or aka Anubis. Xoloitzcuintli. Xoloitzcuintli is the name of the dog. Okay, and before in one of my videos, I broke down some of the roots and prefixes of the Mesoamerican names and what they link to. So again, it's Xoloitzcuintli or Xoloitzcuintli. Okay, so both pronunciations are accepted, and what the name actually means. So the the Xoloitz part means, or Xolo, a deity associated with death, twins, and transformation. And then the last part of it, Itzcuintli, means dog. So Xolot is a deity associated with death, twins, and transformation, or unalivement, or transition, passed on, transformation, and twins. And then Itzcuintli means dog. So it literally means a dog or a spirit dog. And I think if you watch the movie, I think it's Coco, there is the dog guides. The dog goes with him to both guide him and those on the other side. And I do believe the dog is one of these dogs, if I'm correct. So that's just kind of an example of how we see her in not just Egypt. We see her also in the Americas, okay? I think we are pointed towards Egypt to keep us in Africa, but I just want to make this clear. All brown people, all melanated people do not come from Africa. Everywhere was melanated people. Everywhere were melanated great mothers. This is what's led me to this place. Like, I see it clearly. The great mother was highly melanated. Her daughters were melanated. Her daughters are the mothers of sons who then become fathers. And in order for those sons to become fathers, they have to learn from somebody. And they learn from their mothers. And then I think when we get into names, when I say deities and gods, what I'm actually talking about are our star stories connected to the elements and to us and to earth. And so when we say as above, so below, my new theory, my new kind of concept of that, because I used to have a very metaphysical concept of that, like this idea of heaven up there and then bringing it to the earth. Well, with my studies and research and finding, like, almost every story, especially when it comes to religion and scripture, specifically goes back to stars. We can talk about, like, the story of the birth of said Jesus, where the three wise men, which were the belts of Orion, the three wise men, and how they followed the star of Bethlehem. Like, we're literally being told where these stories come from, but then we want to literalize them so that we can have authority here on this planet. And when I say we, I don't mean females. I'm talking about those who took her stories and then rewrote them and re-prophetized them into what we see today. So God, to me, is a concept that is made up to solidify one ideal, or one, I think it's one ideal, because to say there's only one God is kind of discrediting all the other possibilities of even that said creator. But what we see here on this planet is females birthing, females seeding, females laying eggs. Okay? So by looking at nature and by using what I consider just thinking about things, what we see is females teaching. Females first. The mother gives birth, and then she teaches who she's given birth to. And I think this includes sons, as far as I'm concerned. Because, anyhow, all right, back to Anput. Thanks for listening to that. Okay, so back to the spirit dog, or the sacred underworld dog, could be another name that translates for, okay, or translates into. And so this is where Anput and Anubis have a big connection. I'm going to try to leave out the male deity, and I'm going to focus on Anput. And she is also known as Anputah and Anphet, like Anpht. Okay? All right. I think Anput is a good example of I also think this now. I thought it before, but I didn't understand. Oh, I better be careful. I didn't. I think I didn't have the wording for it, or maybe the experience for it. But when I was in college, and I was a non-traditional student, we're talking about feminism. And I have symptoms of like ADD and or neurodiversity. So when I'm listening to a lecture, it does me well to doodle, because then I can think well. And I just remember the specific day because I was doodling a dragon. Anyhow, a co-student, another female, and more experienced than me, she had a few years on me, we got into an argument because she described construction as a male job. And it was at that moment I recognized that all things are female, but I didn't know how to, I didn't put that wasn't my verbiage. I just recognized that we are the ones who decide what are male jobs or what are female jobs, right? We are the ones, and we're the ones indoctrinated in that. Side note, this morning I was having a discussion around religion a little bit. I like those debates because I'm always like, where's the mother? How come you guys aren't talking about the mother? And one of the gentlemen, I say kindly, on the panel, who seemed to be very eager to be peaceful and said respectful and want to be listened to. When I started saying something about, this was my question specifically, when you are using the name Yeshua or Yeshuai or Yeshuaha, which is another one I hear, are you referring, because they were talking about law and all this other stuff, and when it comes to law, there's language technicalities, and you see it around everywhere. But specifically when it comes to Hebrew has the symbols themselves carry law. They are gendered, they have a tone, and they refer specifically back to something. Okay? This is where we get the names like alphabet. This is where we get the name alphabet. It comes from Hebrew. And so, and the reason why I asked that is because if we're going to go into law, and anyways, he literally said, this is man's talk. You need to get up out of here. I was just like, oh my gosh, you're talking about unifying people, but you don't want to listen to females. It's so frustrating, and you are literally proselytizing a book that has been not only masculinated, but was handed to us through the colonizer. And the colonizer still dictates how that religion functions and what the rules are, and still leaves out the Great Mother, unless it's in a performative way, where she's the one you're going to constantly. You see what I'm saying? So, anyways, why did I bring that all up? Oh, because it all goes back to the stars and these type of stories around the Great Mothers and how they also get removed, and then the males come in, or the males get a part of the story, and they decide that they have authority and dictatorship over a scripture that was originally ours, and it wasn't like scripture, it was stories, and it was medicine, and it was travels and other communities with other females sharing their elemental gifts, and it all got translated into what it's translated in today. And it's just frustrating because we can go into all the histories of the people, and we can figure out that most of the things on this planet were built by melanated people, and that is true. But it was specifically melanated mothers. Melanated mothers. And it was egalitarian. Males did have positions of authority and teaching and such, given and handed through great mothers. Period. Like, you can't tell me that there were matriarchal groups. You can't tell me that if he existed, because people are saying Muhammad didn't exist now as well. That's news to me. This is a new one. But if he did exist, his wife was years older than him. And then we go into stories like I've shared, and a lot of these sons start out revering their mothers, go into stories around the womb and the Great Mother, but somehow the rest of the world leaves that out and only focuses on the male. And until even within the deconstruction of Christianity and other religions, until there is more learning done and more listening to the great mothers and women in general, we're in trouble. You can't unify brothers without mothers, sisters, and daughters. You're going to mistreat females. You're not going to unite anybody in Scripture. You're creating a cult, thinking that you're uplifting this deity that may not even exist. Which also brings me to another thing. I recently recognized that I am agnostic. Meaning, I don't necessarily believe in God, but I think that something is possible, something unexplainable created everything. And if I were to give that to something, it would be females. Oh, I remember what I was talking about before in school. I apologize. The theory is that everything is female. Why do we say female? Why do we only say male? Female includes both. Male also includes both, but what it is it's a piece of the female. Without the female, we don't have masculine and feminine. We just have feminine. And then feminine includes all these different things. It includes getting angry. It includes independence, fierce independence. It includes aggression. It includes destruction, which are commonly attributed to masculine energy. Excuse me. And then they take like the moon and the sun, and they're all her. But how we've been taught, which has been through not only patriarchy, but colonialism, it leaves her completely out. And over and over and over again, even if you get super close. Like, these groups were matriarchal. It's like, these groups were matriarchal. Focus on the men. So we're not only decentering males, and I'm trying my best to decenter males, and the male I would say hypocrisy in education and religion around females, specifically around females and women, what we call women. I think I need to do a reading of men out of the books and secrets. I apologize. I will try to timestamp so that you don't want to listen to all of that. You can just go straight into Anput, okay? So, and I went into that because in the description of Anput given to me was she is a perfect example of the feminine authority and power. And I agree, because within her you see what we call masculine and what we are told is feminine. But these are forms of polarity that have been given, that have been genderfied, and then for humans specifically, and then roles applied to those said named polarities. Okay? Anput, the silent guardian mother. Okay. And there's many depictions. There is, I'd like to pull it up. There's a depiction. Here's a common depiction. Oops. Oh. Of her. Oh, it's not coming in. That's too bad. I wonder if I can, I think that's Wikipedia. Okay. She is, man, okay. Okay, here's a common depiction of her in Egyptian style. And you can see on her head, it's a little cut off, but on her head is the dog, and then the plume, and then she has all the appropriate regalia, ankh, staff, rod. Okay, so Anput, also Anupet. Okay, is that here? Anupet? No, okay. She is often described as the female counterpart of or consort of Anubis, but this is framing that reflects the patriarchal kind of filter that I've complained about a lot, because her name means she of Anubis, meaning that, and also linguistically, her name and symbology predates, if anything, parallels, but most likely predates him, not follows him. And she is rarely depicted in later Egyptian art, which is exactly why she is important. She has been subtly erased. Okay. She is the goddess of the in-between, not death itself, but the care around death, not judgment, but guardianship. Her power, her feminine power, or her power without performance, as I was saying before, around, performing roles. She doesn't wage wars. She doesn't wage wars. She doesn't seduce. And that's something that also is patriarchal. The whole word seduction is patriarchal. Anyways, she doesn't demand worship, and neither does any great mother for the most part, and she does not dominate narratives. Instead, she holds space, quote unquote, and literally holds space. She's also represented in the dark star maps I've talked a little bit about. She protects the vulnerable is the metaphysical or spiritual idea. Dogs in general protect vulnerable. She guides souls quietly, and she knows how to stand at thresholds without fear. And these are, spiritual concepts that she was given. And this gives her kind of that crone, even maiden to crone energy. She is also depicted as a demon in necromancy because she is an undertaker. Same with Hecate. They can be considered daemons or demons because of their connection to the afterlife and transformation. Okay. This also, so when we get to the jackal is often given it's kind of sinister, especially in certain movies. I've already mentioned one movie, I don't want to mention the other one, but Disney movie where the jackals are sneaky, and this is often given to coyotes as well. All right. But jackals are said to be protectors of burial grounds, which is interesting because dogs are protectors, we'll just say that. They keep balance between the decay and renewal, and they move between wild and human spaces. She embodies this instinctual intelligence because what did we do? We probably watched the dogs, the wolves, the hyenas. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I said jackal. I'm talking about a jackal. Those are hyenas in the other movie, so scratch that. Okay, but still, jackal has been given this sinister behavior, okay? And this is with wolves and dogs, and this is also attributed to her as well, which is knowing how to protect without being violent, knowing when to stay unseen, and knowing when to move forward or to move past completely. And this gives her quiet sovereignty, and this gives her quiet sovereignty, but we also utilize deities, not us, but a lot of what we've been told about female deities still encompass unseen female labor and the erasure of maternal protectors. Okay? All right? Part of the reason why she was replaced is because of the idea of female authority, and even removing us from the idea of nature, because the wolf pack, dog packs in general, are run by the female because she's the mother. Now, you will also see egalitarian behavior within the wolf pack because her mate will often have the same authority, what looks equal, because he will lead, he will hang out with the pups, he will also give out discipline when necessary without being violent. Dogs in general typically are not, we see them as violent, but when they are in packs, what we see as violent is how they communicate, okay? And then that behavior is given to males, but females run the pack, okay? Let's see here. Okay, it took me a minute to find a photo where I could show you. I think that that is a female. The way the dress is, and you can see a part of her chest that I think depicts Anubis as female, not male. And we don't see this often. We mostly see other depictions of her that are him. And so I wanted to find a photo that is kind of like, I feel like more obvious as to who she is, the truth about this deity, okay? All right, so there's not a lot about her. What has been handed down to me is that she is one of the first primordial deities. She had a twin sister, which is interesting because I hadn't read before that she was linked to Twins, the dog of Mesoamerica, linking to twins, but that Anput and her sister are responsible for the creation of humans. They are human-like and were human-like, maybe bigger, maybe there was a different environment, definitely different skin tone, specifically probably very melanated, and the sisters helped to create the daughters of Earth, and Anput is just her name in Egyptian, right? Because we're going to get into that. Not just in Egypt are there deities linked to animals, but this is all around the world, and the Americas included, okay? So she was very important and slowly was removed or masculinated, and then was still incorporated because of wanting to bring in like courtship, right? And the idea that we needed a male or female counterpart. But when we go way back into history, we see that that is not super common. And when you go into nature, that is also not very common. It's typically one or two males to a bunch of other animals, and it's decided by the female, okay? All right, so we're going to get into the dark star lore, or the star lore when we talk about the dark stars constellation, or the constellations that outline darkness that then become a figure of topic or stories. All right, she is one of them, especially when it's tied to Sirius, and that's all gonna link back to New Year's, okay? And with that, I feel like that's everything as far as like Egyptian link. They were not jackals, they were more like guardian beings, and they were more closely related to wolves or a wolf-like ancestor. I think it's the the dog of Mesoamerica. I think that's actually the link. And as far as here, okay, I think that also kind of shows the link of us going to there rather than the other way around. We took our animization when it comes to like animals and deities, or the connection of animals and deities, what we now call deities, but to them they were ancestors. To us, everything's our ancestor, everything's our cousin, everything's our relative, right? That was hijacked and then retaught to us in a different way. All right. Now, when it comes to the golden jackals, they did not exist in North Africa, including Egypt. So this is why it's more likely it was a wolf or some type of dog, right? They still call it a jackal to this day because of like convenience. But the depictions show in Egypt a long-legged, narrow-waisted, pointy-eared dog. Okay? And it doesn't map cleanly into the jackals. Jackals don't completely look like that. They're similar, but they're different. So the wolf has longer legs, narrow waist, a more upright posture, and is not scavenger coated, right? Most dogs they're scavengers if they have to be, but they typically are a pack animal. And this is where we can see the ancestral kind of connection. Wolves were also ritual guardians, not pests. So how that got skewed, the jackal becomes like a pest. Wolves were not pests. Wolves were supposed to be our first, like, domesticated animal, the first animal that hung out with us. But I don't know if that's true, because how do we know that for sure, right? It's a good theory. It would make sense, but depending on where we were, I think depended on what animals we connected with and where those animals were. Okay. And supposedly jackals are scavengers, but that doesn't really make sense as sacred protectors, right? Because wolves and dogs guard territory. They travel between worlds, day and night, forest, village, wild, and domesticated, and are pack mothers. Okay? Now we're going to bring kind of the connection to Mesoamerica, and I'm going to show you the dog again. Well, here's kind of a more, do we know that's a dog? We don't know that's a dog. But that could be a puma, I'm just saying. Here's one of the depictions, an artifact from Mesoamerica or South America in the Americas of this deity / great mother dog, wolf. Okay, for them, the dog is often black, right, and is a sacred guardian companion, not a pet. So this functions similarly to how Anput is looked at, all right? This is South America. This is how they look at this sacred dog. The Xoloitzcuintli. It's also given the nickname Xolo, the dog. So from here forward, we'll be calling the dog Xolo. Okay, just to help with pronunciation. But that is the common name given to the dog now, like kind of how we have simplified certain names of animals instead of the long names. So, okay. In Mesoamerica, here's kind of the connection. So in Egypt, it's Anput, guides and protects the dead. In Mesoamerica, it's Xolo, and they escort souls into the underworld. When we have North America, we have the wolf and dog spirits, and they are thresholds and ancestor guardians. And the Andes, the black dogs and fox spirits are guides between worlds, all right? So same role, but different land and same memory. And so again, you see. Even if it didn't directly come from the Americas, what you do see are a connection to the animals and behavior connecting to those animals, or relatives or traditions connecting to the animals, okay? And we'll also get to the stars, which I will get to in a little bit. Okay, this is matriarchal and earth-based, right? So for her, again, she's a wolf mother, a pack guardian, and she is also a guardian of logic, and she was turned into a consort. She's also medicine, and in some of my past research, what came up around Anput was she was also medicine and linked to certain flowers and harvest time, okay? This is where she may also be a story linked to literally the star Sirius, which they call the dog star planet, right? Okay. All right. And actually, a jackal comes from modern taxonomy, but not ancient understanding. And this is why I like to do these kind of videos, because even though I don't know for sure, this is what you can see across the world, and by watching these animals specifically, right? Okay. And then if you do want to give it to a deity, a person, a frame of mind as a person, this is how she would show up. Okay. Okay. What is common between all of these also is that wolves became bad. Wolves can be good and or bad, depending, but for the most part, in the patriarchal kind of like colonized depiction of wolves, they were bad. But wolves are good. They typically do not go, just like all other hunting animals, they don't just kill for sport, right? These snakes don't bite for sport. Certain things that spiders don't bite for sport. Bees don't sting for sport. These are all what they can do, but when it comes to us humans, they're not just like looking to get us, right? But we have been taught this incorrectly, I think, to inflict fear or impose fear so that we make decisions around that fear, because what happens with fear is it triggers your nervous system, and your nervous system is like, oh my God, what do I do? And most of us go buy stuff. That's literally like the whole thing is we end up doing things that don't actually match what is created because your nervous system is responding to it. And most people aren't even taught that that's what's happening. Your nervous system is like, what? What's going on? Let's fix it. Okay. And with animals, that's how we figured out to kind of emotionally regulate, because wolves in the wild, they can't just, if they hear a noise or something suddenly startles one of them in the pack, the whole pack isn't going to run off. They're going to pause. They're going to listen. They're going to smell. And then, as a group, they'll all be like, do we stay here? Do we move on? Do we move forward? Because they listen to each other. They have that group function. But for us, we've been individuated, and then we have lost kind of that animalistic focus, trusting like your instincts. How are you feeling? Is this necessary, so to speak? Okay, so when it comes to that part, again, you can see how something feminine gets turned into something either bad or becomes masculated. Okay, so she's another one. Right? And she was also non-aggressive, non-judgmental, very similar to kind of what we would give a benevolent deity in today's world, right? Now, Sirius is also known as Sopdet. also known as Wadjet. And there are some links to Wadjet and Anput. So there is a link to Sopdet, Wadjet, and Anput, okay? And it links to the star we now call Sirius, all right? Sirius itself and Sopdet as the goddess in Kemet was associated with afterlife, rebirth, and guidance of souls. So it's similar to the dog story, right? Signals renewal and not ending. And this aligns with Sirius. And then, as I've said before, Sirius becomes Osiris, and you can see Sirius in the name Osiris, and then how Osiris links to the stories we hear today. So again, another story that links back to the stars. All right, and then when it comes to the dark constellations, or the constellations that show up dark in the darkness, there is the river Road to Souls in the Milky Way, and souls travel through the dark. That is kind of some of these ancient stories. Souls travel through the dark, not through light. And these are guardian animals, okay? So Xolo does this similar to the Xolo the dog does this similar to the actual deity in Kemet. And we're not going to get into like Kemet is over here, because as long as they keep referring to over there, I'm going to link us to there as best I can. Okay? Now, wolf star, and also we're having a wolf moon is what they're telling us. I don't know what makes it a wolf moon, but wolf moon because of wintertime maybe. Okay, wolves often appear in the dark constellation traditions, especially in the indigenous sky maps. Wolves are edge walkers. They guard the threshold of the world. This mirrors kind of that idea of the dark star constellations rather than the bright stars, right? Okay, these deities are also, they're linked to astrology, but they're outside the astrology that modern astrology we are taught today, okay? Now, when it comes to the Americas, we have different tribes or clans that see wolf deities and are also guardian mothers, okay? And there are even some links to the stars here. So the Pawnee considered wolves as sacred star-linked beings. They are also associated with the Milky Way, and female wolves were recognized as teachers and protectors. And the wolf is often tied to the order, ceremony, and cosmic balance. So again, we have stars, which also teach us order, ceremony when it comes to harvest, okay, and balance as far as survival, all right? And then with the Apache and the Navajo or Dene, wolves are ancestors. They are not gods. They are boundary keepers, again, between the worlds. This is a different clan, but similar story. They are often associated with medicine women, and this also goes back to Anput being a medicine mother, okay? Wolves are not bad, but fear narratives came later with colonization, okay? The Hopi, there is an actual wolf clan as part of their people, and they associate wolves with earth memory and migration, and they believe that they hold the knowledge of how people move between worlds and lands, and it is not hierarchical, and it is not male dominated. All right. Now, there's some indigenous logic here that is similar. Across the indigenous America, wolves are not rulers. They are guides. Most of our animals are seen as guides. And if you take the star stories and we look at guides, and we take like the human story and we look at guides, we can see how guides became gods. interpreted in that way, right? Okay, the wolves move between seen and unseen, and you see this across not only the American indigenous, but also across the waters in the African indigenous, linked to Kemet in Egypt. All right, a little bit about Sopdet as the personification of the star Sirius. She was specifically a goddess, not male. All right, rebirth, renewal, also cyclical. She showed time. This is a star, and so we gave her a name, and this is her story, and then we brought her to Earth as a deity, as above, so below. Okay, her hierarchical, her heliacal, when she was rising during a certain time of the year, the new year. So in Egypt, Sirius did mark the new year. All right. So I'm hearing it again. People say spring is in March. Who told you that? Who told you that? Who told you spring is only in March? Because when you start getting into calendars and you start studying the stars, and what we see across the board are the Pleiades, Sirius, and Orion, and then depending on what clan or tribe and what position they are on the planet, those are the prominent stars around the world. And then we have the planets, which is why we have the Gregorian calendar in the way that it is, because we all recognize the planets. These are the planets and celestial objects, the sun and the moon, which are not planets, as we're told, although they move, they're wandering, so maybe they could be considered planets. However, we could see Saturn, Jupiter, Mars with our bare eyes, okay, the planets. Venus, okay? So we have, again, stories of the stars being told and then brought down here. And so when we talk about New Year's, so our calendar is based off of the Julian calendar, which was first, and this comes from religion, and they do pretty much everything by the stars. All the stories are by the stars. Okay, so just a reminder, like, it might be New Year's in spring in certain places, but just be aware of, like, who told you that story. Did the colonizer tell you that story? Or do you know that from passed down history from your people at this time and this place is New Year's? You see what I'm saying? Because it's starting to get light now every day. Could that symbolize a new year? We went into the fall of darkness, and then we're rising again into the light of each day. You see what I'm saying? We don't know for sure how we celebrated New Year's unless we have something handed down to us from a certain place. And guess what? According to the story around Sopdet, she specifically, Sopdet, aka the star Sirius, depicted the new year, right? So and that's something that was recognized to symbolically have January 1st in our calendar be New Year's. It's somewhat linked to Sirius. It's mostly linked to the creation of a calendar. However, included in that are the stars. Okay. And Sopdet ends up becoming Isis, and then Isis becomes Osiris, okay? And again, there's like star wisdom there, but that's Sopdet. And my question was, who predates Anput? Because an Anput is just one of the many names, and that's one language, right? Is there a similar deity in the South Americas, a little bit, yes, right? And we have something similar in the North Americas around wolves, right? So the puma is actually a little bit seemingly more popular in Mesoamerica and South America from my research, but that might just be where that animal happened to be the most popular. Like, I need more stories is my point to that. I can't confirm that from my research, all right? Okay, so in Africa we have Anput. In the Nile sky there is Sopdet. In the Americas there are the wolf mothers and the soul dogs, and also those dogs are very melanated. It's a melanated dog. Its skin and fur are black or very, very, very dark. And we see this link also. When we start going further and further back, you see depictions are of very melanated animals and humans, specifically great mothers, okay? And then we have the dark sky, the Milky Way, and Sirius linking to dogs, dog walkers, that transitional space, guidance, not judgment, and female elder matrilineal links and connections, okay? Okay, so yes, this full moon, the wolf moon, is named for wolves calling in winter, because wolves would howl. The saying is wolves howl at the moon. They're not really howling at the moon, they're howling at nighttime to other wolves. They're just communicating, right? To locate each other and to maintain like pack cohesiveness and reinforce kinship, and that is female-led behavior. All right, so the full moon becomes the moment when the dark moon wisdom becomes audible, or when what is not seen becomes seen at night, right? It lights the earth, right? Okay, and mostly wolves are connected to the dark moon or to the new moon. Female wool, they are most active during that time, wolves. They choose den sites, times of birth, and regulate pack survival during that time. And this kind of links with like matriarchal, triple goddess, triple elemental behavior, right? Great mother behavior. Whoops. Wrong scroll button. Okay. Now, I mentioned the Milky Way and Sopdet and Sirius. All right. So, this female reverence is around the Great Mother Anput, the acknowledgement around stars and the new year, or what are considered New Years. New Year's is often, in across the board cultures, is often signified by star or moon positioning, like the Chinese New Year. That's in February, and it's based around the moon. So it's predominantly in February. Sometimes it's late January, but it's predominantly the first week of February. And I did a whole video on that a few years back around figuring out the 13 star calendar. And I figured that out by following the stars, by paying attention to the moon and the stars. And what you see, and this is what China practices when it comes to the moon, sometimes there's 13 months and sometimes there's 12. And that would make sense, because time isn't solid, it's cyclical, right? So anyhow, that's interesting. But it's typically 13 months. It's not always, but it typically is. Just depends on what the moon's doing, literally. And so this is just to bring more clarification around us going into this theory that spring for us is the new year. We don't know that. We don't know that for sure. Maybe for us, maybe for our ancestral remembrance and our For me, New Year has always been in the fall. I don't know why. To me, that's when it feels like we're actually starting a new year. We're letting go of the old year. We're moving into the next year. I don't know. It might be tribal for me. It may not be. It might be the feminine inside of me that's linking to the moon, and maybe something I haven't discovered yet. But all of us deciding that this is for sure is not always the most helpful, because I feel like it's leaving out some education. All right. Okay, and here's the other thing is we didn't used to do midnight either. Like the days didn't start at midnight way long time ago. We based days on days because they came after night. So I've said this before in some of my other videos. Certain celebrations, specifically Jewish and Islamic, will start at night of the day of that said thing. So like Yom Kippur starts at night. Hanukkah starts at night. Ramadan starts at night. That's because they're still following some of the ancient ways, right? How we saw days and nights. And that's the other thing. When it goes into scripture, it talks about like keep the Sabbath day holy. And do we even know what day that is? Okay. All right. This video is pretty long. And I usually do a reading at the end, but well, let me pause and see if I can. Okay, I saved it. I got a little extra time. Okay, so just to clarify around Sirius and how it relates to the new year that we celebrate, that we just quote unquote celebrate it, okay? Sirius reaches specific accumulation points depending on where you're at on the planet and what era they're in or we're in, because as I've said before, the calendars, there's 400 and something different calendars existing today on this planet right now. Okay, so we don't know New Year's, we don't know. This is also part of colonization, I'm just saying. Okay. And then it is a visible cycle that seems to change around the 1st of the Gregorian calendar, okay? This is the story. Sirius disappears, Sopdet, disappears for 70 days and then reappears just before sunrise, January 1st, okay? But this is not here. Wait. Have I been seeing Sirius? I feel like I have. Well, it's been cloudy. I can't confirm nor deny this right now because I haven't been able to see Sirius for the last couple nights. But typically I've been seeing it. And it hasn't disappeared for 70 days. So is this over there? It must be over there. It must be, right? Because this is what makes all this stuff so confusing. Who is it disappeared for 70 days? Okay, because I know I saw it within the last 70 days, right? So does it disappear in Egypt and then reappears on the 1st in Egypt? Because that would make sense, because Egypt is linked more to Rome than the Americas are, right? That was brought out. They came over here. We went over there, but I don't think this was, I think we learned stuff when we went over there. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Also, this time of the year coincides with the night. Yeah, it is over there. For them, when the Nile flooded, it marked the true New Year. So it was based on when Sirius reappeared, and when Sirius reappeared, then these floodings would happen, and then that would signify their new year, right? So it sounds to me like we're basing the Gregorian calendar and the Julian calendar off of what the Greeks and Romans learned from Egypt. Okay, that's what it sounds like. So, just tying that all in. And this is why Sopdet, the Great Mother Goddess, aka Wajet, aka Anput, as far as I'm concerned. That's me. I'm doing that. That isn't quantified specifically anywhere. But I'm linking Anput, the dog goddess, to the dog star as well, right? Okay? But that's why stars and these deities became so important. Because they literally, okay, if you turn a star into a said god, and that god can predict the weather, predict your harvest, you see where that misnomer of giving this deity some kind of power that is actually us recognizing what the importance of knowing what the stars are doing, because we not only did it for harvest, this is how we got around. We would often travel at night because we knew what stars to follow. We've been so backwards in the world to just predominantly excuse the Great Mother. I think also to not question or to look into nature and look into certain things, because, from the bear, why would you choose a bear? Because most often bears are going to be like more scared of you. You can defend yourself by making a lot of noise and the bear will go away. Like, if you learn about these animals that the snake, the wolf, especially the snake. I'm so tired. It is exhausting to listen to people use a snake as you being a bad person. Like, it's hilarious. It's not hilarious for snakes because they're like, we don't do anything to you guys ever. We never do anything to you guys. You guys mess with us, and that's everything. Same with spiders. It's real frustrating. Okay, this video is going on a long time. A little longer than I wanted it to go. So, we will wrap it up by I'm going to do something a little different today. Hello. I'm grabbing some of my automatic writing deck cards along with the Great Mothers and Goddesses deck. I always call it that. Sacred Mothers and Goddesses deck, okay? Well, let's see what happens. Because I've noticed that depending on what this one wants to come out. Firsts. That one popped out firsts. So for me and for you, because oftentimes when I'm reading, I realize like it's not just for you guys, it's also for me. So probably, hopefully, right? Okay. This is what I downloaded at the time, so I'm just going to share it with you. Thank you. All right. You are the first. This is what it means. Either you are the first firstborn, you are the first to heal family traumas, you are the first to step out on a way or a path that no one in your group of friends, family, job, or co-workers has done before. And then there might be new firsts for you, new to you, new things coming to you that are firsts. But I've often noticed that when I get into this, speaking about the Great Mother, I just see these paths show up. I mean, granted, I saw them also when I was looking at our deity or earth being, not earth, but this deity being masculine. I still would have things where you're like, wow. But I thought that was more nature. I would say God, but I I didn't picture like a male. I pictured like this energy of the earth working. And like, it has always felt motherly to me. I never really put like a face or specific gender until more recently. And that's only because of our culture, not because I think it's highly possible that a deity or a great creator or whatever, God, whatever you want to call, not God, but creator being, if there is such one, may be genderless, may be undifferentiated as far as gender goes, but polarity would exist within the deity while creating. So how that expression would show up could be female, male, you see what I'm saying? Like the body, the mindset. But as far as like overall earth, okay, telepathic empath. Telepathic empath. So you have these gifts. Keep going and find the tools. Create boundaries. Specific message for someone here. Like you've been wondering about it. It's just coming into you. All right, so I'm just going to bring some side notes in with telepathic empath. So there are many ways to work with this energy. You can bring in crystals and stones. You can bring in ritual, if that's kind of how you practice. And also you can practice independently. One fun one without getting too tapped into like energies, because you just want to be careful around, I don't want to say be careful, but be aware of energies, right? You should always be aware of energies, and if it doesn't feel good, go away from it. If it feels good, stick with it, right? Okay, is closing your eyes and kind of, I used to do this at home, at my other home, because our house was pretty big. You can like either be inside and say the animals or people in your household are outside, or vice versa. You can be outside and they're inside. You can take a moment and you can feel where each person or animal is in the house. And then you can always double check that. But that's a fun one to kind of practice without going into someone else's energy. You're feeling around, so to speak. But anyways, my long-winded part before I pulled the card is that I see how there are these connections to the Great Mother and to what I talk about that I have not, it's like wildly coincidental. Okay? Wildly coincidental to me. All right, so I'm going to pull one more of these cards. Not even coincidental, like magical or elementally cool. All right. Let's try natural witch. All right, that's the next one. Natural witch. Meaning you're a natural witch. You were born, depending on how I interpret the word witch is a good thing. Somebody who can communicate with animals, somebody who can communicate, who is also like a telepathic empath. You might be the first witch in your family, or you might be the first in your family to recognize that you're from a family of witches, or that you have these innate gifts that haven't really been taught, but you are aware of them and somehow know about them. And medicine, water, Reiki, massage, doctor, nurse, practitioner, therapist, like tarot reader, energy reader, somebody who doesn't hang out with anybody, right? You know what I mean? Those are still natural witches. And it actually used to be quite a popular thing for witches not to be hanging out with everybody anyways. Because, one, it's a lot of energy. They're aware of that. They can tap into that. And two, practice, right? And just, it's easier to speak to nature when you're in it and with it, so to speak. All right, let's see what cards pop out. I just shuffle a little bit. Athena. We've had Athena before. I'm going to pull again. Athena has some good stuff. Wisdom and knowledge. That definitely links. Okay, Lalita. Follow your bliss. We've also had her before. Okay, so Athena is 3. And though I love the art on these cards, Athena is more melanated to me, and I have seen pictures of Athena more melanated. And then here's Lalita. Follow your bliss. Okay. And I'm going to pull one more. I'm going to roll this morning. Embrace the sacred feminine. I'm pretty sure I pulled this one before as well. That number is 40. Lalita is 21. So we have 2 3s. We have 3 Athena. So I'm going to do a little reading around Athena and Lolita from the book. I have in recent videos, I believe we have pulled Lolita before. So, just quick. I guess it's not really super quick, but Lalita, follow your bliss, divine mother. Lalita, the beloved Hindu goddess, she's Hindu, represents play, bliss, and the love that is pure. She sets order to all creation and organizes cosmic energies. Maybe we haven't read her. This feels new. Karmic energies. Lalita trusted destiny to make the final choice about whom she would marry. You know how I feel about those stories. She tossed a garland of flowers into the air and it landed on Lord Shiva. Okay. So however, she consented to marry him only if she could remain independent. Okay, we accept that. Lalita was the leader of an army of female warriors, one of the most feared in the land. One day, when they were under attack, she found all her soldiers asleep and they could not be woken. Lalita opened her mouth, not to scream, but to laugh, and it was then that she gave birth to the god Ganesh. Ganesha is also the other name, and I think Ganesha is female. All right. He helped her break the spell that had cursed her soldiers to sleep, and they won the battle. Interesting. Lalita desires perfect harmony and compassion amongst all human beings. To this end, she manifested the great saints who emerged from her fingertips to restore righteousness on earth. There's got to be a star story to that, okay? There's got to be. All right. Her message: don't compare yourself to others. Feel free to bring in your goddess-given talents and tap into that dream or desire that you keep inside. Satisfy your passion for doing whatever calls and makes you excited and joyful through life. Everything will come together. And review the path you're on if necessary. Are you feeling stuck, complacent, or afraid to follow your highest excitement? Are you afraid? We're not going to say, are you afraid? We're not going to say that. Are you feeling criticized or like you're failing? She can help you pull through that, or like your direction. Remember, if you honor your authentic truth and do what brings you joy, you will excel at everything you do. Okay? Man, all right? And live the way that amplifies your vibration and those around you and the planet. All right. So that's a little bit about her. Okay? And we're going to do a quick check-in with Athena, though I've read her several times. And Athena, Athena is like both war and peace and beauty, okay? She's also considered the Greek goddess of wisdom. She is a wise warrior goddess who battles using her wits and diplomacy. And then she is also a lover of arts and literature. And she is a companion with the owl. All right. Night. So it links a little bit to our nighttime story, connection. And she links around power and knowledge and wisdom. And also unlearn or relearn if needed. It's definitely something I try to do. And hopefully that's part of, what a lot of people are doing. And she is basically kind of brought around diplomacy, wisdom, and then she's great to be utilized for like legal disputes, for studying, memorization, anytime you're interested in wisdom. And she helps to calm anger, even though she is a war-related deity, right? Or elemental being. So, embrace the sacred feminine. I mean, there's not a lot more to say to that. I know I've pulled that one before as well, fairly recently, in one of the last few female Reverence Sundays. And why? Okay. Embrace the sacred feminine, the powerful energy of the divine feminine, or I like to, because it's all, the idea of energy and creation and what a mother represents, okay? This is a connection. This is a reach out to you who might be listening, and also to myself, to keep going towards this part of us. The sacred feminine. And it's interesting because, like I said, we're on a wolf moon. Okay. So this calls into like love and boundaries and getting to know yourself, learning about yourself and learning. And especially around great mothers and the divine feminine. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here, watching, subscribing. If you want a little bit more stuff, I have more things about the dark constellations on my page, or on my memberships, and then I go into healing concepts around chakras and nervous system and emotions on my Patreon, if you're interested in checking that out. Eventually I'm going to combine everything and kind of give a general membership and cost for everything, so that the message can kind of flow more. Okay, thanks for listening to that. Thanks for listening and being here. It's a long one. Okay, until next time.